There will be major spoilers for both Live Alive and Touhou Alive in this video. This is the second part of a two-parter, so if you haven't watched the first part, please do so. There is also some content in this game that can be triggering to certain people. I will give an adequate warning when appropriate when the scene shows up, so you can skip the section altogether. With that said, let's get to the video. Orsted is one of my favorite characters in gaming. He's an absolutely wonderful take on a silent protagonist who goes through many trials and tribulations throughout his journey. While his motivations are questionable at times, all of his choices align with doing the right thing, being the hero that he was made to be. However, no matter what he did, tragedy after tragedy befell the man until he was but a shell of himself, which then, in turn, brought darkness into his heart. His is a tragic tale, and one that I adore. With that said, I was quite curious as to how Touhou Alive would go about tackling the story, and the end of my first playthrough, well, it left me perplexed, confused, and disappointed. But now, after this playthrough, I think I see it. So join me as we tackle the final chapters of Touhou Alive. Things are usual expected fare going into the fantasy chapter. You have a tournament where you, this character named Mima, participate to get to the final round. Your final opponent is Marissa. Yes, the very same Marissa from Mei Ling's chapter. Why is she here in the first place? Well, when I first played the game, I just thought this was a different part of the country and Marissa just has a life. That will be my explanation until something says otherwise. Either way, we win the tournament and are declared to be a knight for Gensokyo. This is where things start to branch off a bit. In the original, Orsted won the tournament and won the right to the princess's hand in marriage and the future rule of the kingdom. However, Mima just becomes a knight and definitely does not have a romantic thing for this counterpart with Reimu. At least I don't think she does. Either way, they have a nice conversation on the roof where it starts snowing. Oh hell yeah, it's Christmas! And I'm 2 months early. Damn it. This is where the princess would be taken by the King of Dark, but instead, it fades to dark and we get exposition. A year ago, a tower rose and lay dormant, until eventually its inhabitants, the Makai, started invading Gensokyo. This started the first war that Gensokyo ever partook in, the Gensokyo Makai War. Very creative name, but I actually started to get hooked here. It really seems like we're not just getting a rehash of the fantasy chapter from the original game. To prove this point further, the princess replacement with Reimu actually joins us right at the beginning. Her and Mima promise to do something about this war and set off, but not before the most important thing in the game: newspapers! Yeah, throughout the chapter, we'll get these chances to read newspapers to read up on lore and make sure we're not missing out on important plot beats. One of the most interesting things is a paper recording 2 years ago that mentioned 5 disappearances: Macau, Mei Ling, Cerno, Yomu, and Ran, all characters we played as before. The only ones not present in this paper are Ponga and Sheng. One is a doll and another is just a silly little guy. Still, very odd. We step outside and Marissa stops us. In the OG, this is probably signaling every alarm bell in your brain, but we'll get to that, don't worry. Anyways, now we can finally start the chapter proper, and the layout is completely different compared to the original. First of all, we start off with 3 characters with Mima, Reimu, and Marissa. Mima is like a jack of all trades. You get weapons and accessories throughout that let you focus on either her physical or magical attacks. And that makes for some pretty dynamic character building. Yes, character building in a Live Alive game. As much as I love the original, you were pretty railroaded into builds, and here we get a bit more freedom. As for the other 2, Reimu is our white mage with some pretty decent attacks up her sleeve, and Marissa is our black mage who has quite a few different powerful spells in her arsenal. Or she can just attack with her ass. I would question things, but Marissa is pretty crass, so it's not really out of character. Either way, we explore quite a bit, head past a town, and find this lady named Kamoi getting attacked by bandits. And for whoever really likes this character in Touhou, I would like to formally apologize for how dirty she was done. She gets barely any screen time despite her being playable, and it's just depressing. I mean, it's not the worst hand a character is dealt. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, this fight is actually pretty interesting in that you automatically lose if Kamui is killed, which is not something you ever saw in the original game, and makes the encounter a lot more unique. After a rematch, we take care of these Tengu and start having a discussion. Now, while I love the original Fantasy chapters cast to bits, there isn't a whole lot of time to let any of the characters really shine. In this chapter, there are plenty of times where characters just get to talk. Let the characters express themselves, get fleshed out, all of that. We continue on, find the door to this tower is sealed, and get the bright idea to get Yuka, that one annoying opponent in Cirno's chapter, to help open the door, since she solved the incident with the Makai. Now, I'm going to assume this was just a casual chat or something, since we're supposed to be in the first recorded war in Gensokyo. We head south to South Village, yes, really, and eventually find Yuka in her garden. We beg her to help us, but she refuses, going into detail about her backstory. Yuka used to really hate humans, but one day she found one who had gotten lost in her garden. After patching her up, they started to talk a lot more and eventually grew a close bond. 1 year later, Yuka was given a music box as an act of friendship. Afterwards, she stopped coming once a previous war broke out. Wait, okay, so did they just not have paper or any way to write at this point? How are we in the first recorded war between these two when Yuka settled the matter of a previous war? She was given a music box! I would assume that's more advanced than paper! Whatever, her friend died by the hand of Makai, so she just really doesn't want to bother with anything anymore. Though Mima talks some sense into her and tells her that Makai will just continue to do the same thing to others, so she decides to join us. Not before mentioning that Mima actually wanted to rule Gensokyo before, with Mima telling her that she's changed. Keep that in mind for later. We go back to the tower with a key in our hands. What key is this? Why, it's Brian, of course. The sword passed on from Hash to Orsted in the original. There are a few events that happen in between, but they aren't all that noteworthy. Just used to get to know the crew a bit more before the final battle. Now we have our final dungeon with the tower, and yeah, this is where things start to go back to the norm. We have the usual boss room that hosted the bosses from the original, as well as a statue for Odio, I think? And then we have statues for every boss in this game, with the one from Return being right in the middle. You know, the chapter I really hated. Though, funnily enough, the boss from that chapter was the meme head of Reimu, so I wonder what's going on in her head when she sees it. Nah, whatever, that doesn't matter. It's time to fight the creator of the Makai, Shinki. We don't get much dialogue before the big fight, we just get right into it, and yeah, she's pretty rough. She deals quite a bit of damage to us, while also being immune to quite a few of our attacks. Not only that, but she also has an insta-kill move, and not like just instantly downs our party member, but just completely wipes them off the face of the earth. So we have a bit of a DPS race here, and because of my negligence, we lose the first fight from a glitch. Yeah, so this isn't something that popped up before, but sometimes the game can just straight up completely stall in the middle of a fight. I don't know what causes it, but it makes it so that you can't move, attack, or do anything at all. It's really annoying whenever it happens. With that annoyance out of the way, I retry the fight and actually win this time. We go through a similar realization that this wasn't the real enemy, but a clone. Thankfully, Yuka doesn't start coughing up a lung like in Live Alive, but Mrs. still gets dunked on by bugs. Yikes. We return home as losers of this fight, with the queen as understanding as she can be, which ends Chapter 1. Yeah, that's right, we got chapters inside this chapter, and this is where the fantasy chapter really starts to come into its own. Chapter 2 starts with a public execution. Yeah, that's certainly a way to open things, but it isn't made for just shock value in mind, as it is here to show how prominent of a threat Makai is, as well as name drop Odio. You know, that giant pain in the original game? Yeah, so now Makai kind of worships the guy, which gives more credence to this being a sequel. You know, if Hong Mei Ling being directly taught by Yuan Zhou didn't clue you in enough. We cut back to Mima and Reimu's perspective, where they are caught in the rain. Something pina coladas. We also get to meet up with Mira, a general of Gensokyo, and I would like to say to any fans of Mira, I'm so sorry. She's awful. I can't stand her. And we'll get into why later. These three are on a mission with a completely unique part of the game. In fact, from this point on, it's unique until a certain point, which is why I say this really comes into its own. Basically, we get an assassination mission on a high-ranking Makai officer. We take a nap in this base before we get a conversation with Mira. She mentions that she just can't put trust in people, which is clear is coming from her, but we'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe some shitty stuff happened to her in her life. We then get our dungeon in the form of these sewers. This place actually has a gimmick all to itself in the form of these breakable walls. You find bombs throughout the dungeon and make use of them to proceed to get extra items. It's pretty neat. We also find a secret area and get this gun. I proceeded to never use it since it was an item and I tended to forget that they exist. We get to the end of the dungeon and find this manufacturer in the Makai army. And we also get something else super unique in this game. In-battle dialogue. That's right, at certain thresholds in battle we get dialogue. While it only happens in this one when we kill the opponent, later fights will have it all throughout the battle. With the battle won, we return to the castle with Mima in some deep retrospection. The person they just killed happened to be someone Mima knew very well, but wasn't able to talk her down. Others are able to celebrate just fine, but Mima is just depressed about it. However, time waits for no one, and we're getting straight back into action while looking for Yuka. We apparently got a sighting in Eversnow Forest. You'll never guess the weather there. Mima and Reimu have a maybe fruity conversation here? Wait, shit, gotta check something real quick. Oh, thank God, they're just Taunter and Warden? What the hell does that mean? Anyways, Mira's homophobic about the situation or something, and we continue on with our journey. You know, I made the joke earlier, but the entire Gensokyo region is actually snowing now, which is pretty damn cool, honestly. You never got this sort of environmental changes with the original game, so it's a nice attention to detail. After a bit of exploration, we find Kamoi! She's back! I'm sure we'll have her in the party for a very long time. It's gonna be great! We fight some Tengu bandits again, save this girl named Letty, who was another fighter in the Ice Fairy chapter, and Kamoi is gone. Hope it was nice to have her while we did. Guess we gotta just deal with Mira. Ugh. The Tengu fight was actually pretty cool though, as enemies came back as soon as you dealt with one, with there being like 16 or 20 in total. It's a marathon of a fight, but still pretty damn cool. Letty lets us know where to find Yuka though, so we go ahead and follow her directions to save our pal. We eventually find ourselves in the slum area we found in the Gatekeeper chapter, and have a run-in with this Tengu bandit named Hatate. After the fight, we interrogate them, and honestly, the way Mira is going about things, it kind of reminds me of Carter Blake from Heavy Rain. Which is not a compliment in the slightest. That guy sucked. Either way, Mima starts being a decent person because Mira was just about to kill this bird, and lets her go after she gets the information on Yuka's whereabouts. We rescue Yuka after this other bird kills this random person, and Mira spouts some racist bullshit. Could you not be an asshat for 1 second, Mira? Seriously. Oh right, Yuka talks about some key or something. I completely forgot to mention that. Yeah, so she knows about a key that can open something or something like that. Gonna be honest, I completely forgot and I don't feel like finding the dialogue that describes its importance. It ultimately really isn't that important to the grander story anyways. Anyways, now we find out that Yumeni has been captured too! Good lord, how many times is this gonna... Oh right, Yumeni! She's some red-haired girl that's kinda cool, I guess. She's got busted stats at least. And once we bust her out, we realize this was a trap, and this girl turned zombie named Chiyuhi tries to kill us. This is some other plot we got wrapped up in, so we have to nip this in the bud while we can. We have this fight with Neberos. Oh my god, I love Persona! We also have to fight Belial, and these two are actually the parents of the one doing all this stuff. Alice. The same Alice from the Return chapter? Nah, this one is a child. And yeah, that makes what we have to do even more messed up. Thankfully she does flee, but our means are feeling less and less justified at this point. So what's next up on our chopping block? A village is being raised by the Makai, alright? Seems easy enough. We quell that and... well, this is where things start to get a bit wild. Since the villagers are a little apprehensive about the war, Yumemi brings us outside and says we have to kill every single person in the village.
What? No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
they're also gonna cover it up as the Makai doing such an atrocity, which, yeah, kinda just crosses the line for Mima at this point. She's had enough of this and is ready to fight back. Thankfully, Reimu has always been our bestie on matters, but Mira shows that she's fully on board with the plan. She starts whining about heroism until a fucking turtle rams into her at Mach 5. Good lord. I assume this turtle is Reimu's? Maybe? I don't know, man. He's joined with Strabo? Wait, no, his name is Caesar. Sure, buddy. Either way, he's here to help us with our escape. And yeah, escape, because the army of Gensokyo is much too large for us to do anything major about the situation. All we can do is flee. And flee we do as the massacre is carried out. It's damn tragic and is the ending of Chapter 2 of the Fantasy chapter. Chapter 3 begins with us at our lowest point, with both Mima and Reimu being branded as traitors in cahoots with Makai, and being major players in the massacre. Caesar then comes back and tells us why he's helping us in the first place, and it's a bit of a bomb in two ways. For one thing, he is definitively Strabo from the original game, and is trying to right his own wrongs. He's pretty much the reason why all of the bad shit happened to Orsted in the OG, well, minus Hash coughing up his lungs. That wasn't on him, but everything else? Pretty much his fault. So he's trying to make amends. And this conversation also reveals that Makai was, in fact, born from the aftermath of the original Live Alive story. It's a nice way to tie things together and helps the callbacks not feel so out there. We get info on Yuka being in one of the villages and kinda have no choice but to see if it's true. Sadly, it's not, and Mira and her bitch ass shows up again. And the music that plays for the battle is Final Fantasy Tactics music. Wait, that's not Touhou at all! I had good faith the entire OST was Touhou in Live Alive! Wait, how much is Touhou and how much is other games? Is any of this real? Am I here right now? Either way, she just retreats. But one of the soldiers kinda just says, nah, this stuff sucks, and just lets us know about Yuka's whereabouts. She's currently being tortured by Yukari to find out where that dreaded key was. And yeah, we get a scene showing the aftermath of that, with Yukari giving this lengthy monologue about how she's going to take over everything and all that. Basic villain stuff. And how she's pretty much gotten her own key at this point. So, nuts to that storyline. But sadly, this is where I have to mention that things start going downhill. And they go downhill fast. Not for events in the story, but with quality. I will mention right now that this is where I start talking about triggering stuff. If you are not comfortable with discussions of the subject on screen right now, I will provide a time to skip to completely avoid the topic. I will give you some time to do so. Ready? So the scene ends with Yukari having some knights brought in, and her mentioning that they can do whatever they want with Yuka now that she's outlived her usefulness. The eager knights walk up and, though not directly stated, the lines following the pan over implies that Yuka was raped. And I find this absolutely reprehensible. What is the purpose of putting this scene in here? To show how shitty Yukari is? We already knew how awful she was when she tortured Yuka in the first place. Does it handle the matter respectfully? No, it feels tacked on, and we barely get anything with Yuka afterwards. Her story is not a focal point of the narrative afterwards, so it doesn't build to anything. This honestly feels like it was just used for shock value, which is one of the worst reasons to put something like this in your media. It's honestly disgusting that this was ever even used as a beat in the game, and is majorly disappointing since overall it was a fun and campy game. It's not important to anything, it's not given any respect that the topic requires, and overall it's just a blight on the game. I don't know if the creator of the game is still online to this day, but if he is, please don't harass him over this. As awful as this is, this was made nearly 20 years ago. I just hope that wherever he is, that he grew past this and never made such a blunder again. Well, with that done and over with, we invade the castle and fight Yukari. She has powerful attacks, so be wary to not glitch the fight and have to restart it all goddamn. So be wary with your positioning and how you attack, and you should be pretty okay. We topple Yukari and finally free Gensokyo from her clutches. From here, we can start rebuilding relations with Makai, end this war, and have some competent people to rule. Oh, and the other soldiers? Yeah, I guess they're a-okay. They don't mind an assassination on their ruler. Now we get a good night's rest until a black figure wakes us up and brings us to the throne room. And then Yumeni expresses that she's lost control of her body, and that we need to kill her. Then, get this, after the deed is done, the minister comes in and starts branding us a traitor. Wait, so these guys are a-okay with us toppling Yukari, but Yumeni was going too far? This felt like it should have been explored, and yeah, if this sounds familiar, that's because it is. When I said things start going downhill, I mainly meant that at this point, the game starts to go back to the original storyline of the fantasy chapter in Live Alive. Caesar stays back to let us escape. We come back for him. He had his eyeballs gouged out! Holy hell, that's new! He helps us escape and tells us to go to the Demon's Tower again. We can actually go back to the throne room and kill the minister in this timeline, which, good, fuck that guy. One more thing to mention before the end is that this dungeon has brand new phobias. The original phobias were enemies and mini-bosses you fought in your last climb through the Demon's Tower in the original Live Alive. But in this game, it has brand new phobias. I'll just go over the mini-bosses real quick, as mentioning all of them and their significance would be tiring. We have Demonophobia, who is the fear of demons and monsters. Makes sense, as this whole chapter was about Makai. This phobia right here is Funky Fresh and is Stereophobia, which apparently is the phobia of stereotypes. Wars always have some amount of disagreement between cultures, so that makes some degree of sense. Third, we got Uranophobia, which is the strange phobia of either heaven or the sky itself. This is one that I didn't know about, but with Makai being the place that holds demons, a fear of heaven makes sense. And then lastly, we got Ballistophobia. This is the phobia of missiles and bullets, which I like to think is a little nod that Touhou tends to be a bullet hell game. Overall, these phobias are pretty damn inspired and cool. But enough of that, it's time to end this in the way we all know how. We reach the top of the Demon's Tower only to find an alive and well Marissa. Well, not so well because she really hates Mima. Her whole speech is very similar to Straybo's, which is enrooted by deep jealousy from Mima's own accomplishments. For some reason, our heroes don't speak at all until the final fight starts. Marissa honestly isn't that hard of a fight. With us still having two party members, one with great healing, it's only a matter of time before she goes down. However, Reimu hates that everything had to go down this way. So many people have died for this outcome and she just can't stand it. Mima tries to tell her that what they did, they just had to do, but Reimu is just so sick of everything at this point that she lashes out. And in a blink of the eye, with the last of her strength, Marissa shoots a beam straight through Reimu's heart, killing her immediately. Just like Orsted, this tragedy hurts Mima to the point of no return. Oh, and of fucking course Mira comes in to rub salt in the wound, saying that Mima did this and that everyone we tried to protect will die. So, without anything else, Mima gives in, and dooms the world just as Orsted once did, becoming the Lord of Dark. Rage? Oh wow, that is significantly less cool than Odio, but that's how the chapter caps off. Overall, I appreciate this chapter a hell of a lot for everything unique it does. The story itself isn't the greatest, with a lot of through lines being pretty sloppy, and having very questionable decisions on what gets implemented, but there's a lot of effort that went into this chapter to make it super unique, which is why it's a shame that things started and ended almost the exact same way. It was majorly disappointing for me on a first playthrough, but on a second, well, I think I've taken something else away from it. There aren't many notable characters in this chapter, outside of like how rough Yuka has it and how awful Mira is. But Mima is definitely cool in both how she stands out from Orsted and how she's a carbon copy of him. Let me explain. Mima used to be pretty damn bad, like wanting to rule over Gensokyo bad. But at some point before the events of the game, she turned over a new leaf. What made her want to do this? Well, I don't remember it being very explained in the game, so never mind that for now. Either way, Orsted wanted to do good and ultimately tried to do the right thing. up until the entire world was against him and he gave in to the Lord of Dark. Mima did the very same, but with the added bit of background of her once being a villain. While she tried to redeem herself and did right by so many people, everything she did only made things worse. So many people died for what she tried to accomplish that, while not her fault entirely, she had a hand in it. And at the end, no matter how much she tried, by the end she's lost everything. And thus, lets hatred in again. Despite everything Mima tried to do, she couldn't distance herself from what the past was. Which sounds a little familiar, huh? What I took away is that Mima is a representation of the game itself. The game tries a few times to be original in chapters like Gatekeeper and Hurai, but with how many chapters stick super close to home, it's hard for the game to find an identity. And it all culminates in this chapter, where it starts off like the original for a bit before it tries to become entirely unique. But no matter what happens, it all ends the same. Mima repeated history and became the Lord of Dark, despite how much she wanted to avert it. Could I be looking too far into things? Possibly. I was given comments in the last video that states that Touhou Alive is more of a passionate love letter of two games, more so than a game trying to take itself seriously. But I can't help it. When I see something in a game, even if unintentional, I like to point it out, whether good or bad. And honestly, Mima does quite a lot for me in a conceptual level. I quite like how she was handled. But of course, if you know your Live Alive knowledge, that's not the end. We have one last chapter where we choose one of the 7 protagonists from the first part of the game and aim to defeat Mima. Now I should mention, at this point in the original, you were allowed to choose Orsted, where you would play as the previous bosses of the 7 chapters and destroy everything. But that option for a bad ending is completely absent. So instead, I made my choice with Yomu. Why Yomu? Because she's badass, and I didn't use her my first playthrough. The final chapter plays it pretty close to the original in structure, so I'll just go over the clip notes of everything, making mention of important bits. After choosing Yomu, we get the previous ending with her and Yukimo before we are suddenly taken out of our timeline and warped to a broken Gensokyo from Mima's chapter. What's interesting to note is that unlike the original Live Alive, this version of Gensokyo is super broken up. Most of the places we visited are here, but it's kind of jumbled up, which honestly makes navigating the whole thing a nightmare, but makes the experience pretty neat. We also start with Murasame that was gifted to us, so sparing everyone gave us something after all. That's right, I lied to you, just to avoid spoilers. Just like in the original, enemy encounters are scaled to your party's level, so you don't have to worry if you picked a character who is super bad or anything. But for me specifically, Yomu is a pretty damn great choice. She isn't super fragile and has some insanely hard-hitting attacks. While exploring, I find this hut that lets you exchange items for other items. This sort of works like a shop, with the main currency being cure grass. The only real effective way to get this is through grinding rather than an optimal way as you play through the game. So that's a bit disappointing, but if you want to spend like an hour or something grinding the cure grass, it's a way to get some nice healing items or equipment for a specific party member. We take a teleporter and warp across the map where we find this optional dungeon. Each one of these has a different gimmick to them, and this one is a fun one. It's trivia! You get fun questions like, who preceded Queen Elizabeth I? Which buttons on a remote have small bumps on them? What the hell? We had multiple models of remotes when this game came out, right? What is Meringue made of? What the hell is even Meringue? Needless to say, I'm too dumb to solve this quiz and am forced into a fight against Blademaster here. And it doesn't go well. So I just ditch this place and go do something else. I find myself at a shrine and meet up with Macau. Now we finally have a second party member. Our main goal this chapter is to get everyone in the party so that we don't get the bad ending. Not too far away from Macau, we also find Ponga in this dried up field of flowers, and have him join us. Sadly, we don't get to keep any of the equipment or items that weren't equipped to the main character. Now, with more than one party member with us, I head up to the castle to pick up some more stuff, like a bunch of items on the walls, and more importantly, our first optional dungeon for a specific character. See, that quiz dungeon actually wasn't character specific. So on top of the usual dungeon for every party member, we get additional dungeons for other pieces of equipment. This makes this final chapter pretty expansive. My main issue with the original's final chapter was that there wasn't much to do outside of just getting everyone and doing their respective dungeons, so this is honestly pretty neat. Either way, we need to do Yomu's trial, where we have to Solid Snake our way through multiple corridors. Oh, and you can't do your fancy schmancy pausing tricks to reset where the enemy is either. You gotta get through these in one shot. Thankfully, I am just that guy and get through it in one shot. And get the... I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that. Which, since we already got the Murasame from all of the sparing we did, isn't much of an upgrade, honestly. Better to just get it out of the way, I guess. Up on the balcony we find Shang, but since we don't have anything to help her, we kinda just have to ditch her for now. Darn. On the other hand, we do get to wake up a sleeping Cirno to join our party. She'll be part of the final team, so I want to make sure she gets some good EXP early on here. Next up, we find this dungeon with a bunch of radios in it, and they actually give us some background on the events of the fantasy chapter. We find out that the newspapers were actually made by someone who could see into the future. I think some explanation for why Ran has a damn pistol, and also messages from people who used to worship Odio. We never really got to see people worship Odio in the original, so it's kinda neat to see a new culture be explored in this game. At the very end, we get a message from Reimu confirming that our protagonists are from the past, and that we must stop Mima to protect the Gensokyo that she tried to protect. And then we get a useless accessory that I never use. Never mind that heavy stuff, we find Ran and finally get to recruit her. She's another character I want in our final party, so she's going to get much needed attention. There is something you can supposedly do with her Peacemaker, and that's to fight 30 or so enemies with it, and I could have sworn I got way more than that, but it didn't happen. So sadly Ran won't be at the highest level she can be. But that'll be fine, I'm sure. And I should also mention that unlike the original, all of your party members stay in the group rather than having just 4 guys at a time. You can swap out party members anytime when you rest in these beds, and it's a goddamn godsend. We run around this dungeon where you fiddle about in the dark and find a rat's pendulum, an accessory that grants a bunch of speed. Speed isn't that great of a stat in this game, so I don't really bother with it. Next, it's time to get Mikao's ultimate weapon. When it came to Akira in the original, you needed to teleport from battles and you would randomly go to his dungeon. However, since Mikao doesn't have the teleport command, we instead find this bed and, well, Mikao starts having nightmares. Pretty damn vivid nightmares with these weird smiling faces. Now they may look like unique enemies, but they are actually just clones of other enemies you fight in the chapter. Still, they are rather unnerving. And then we end up in... Okay, Mikao, what did you take before going to bed? Because melatonin sure as hell doesn't do this to you. At least I don't think it does. Oh, never mind, she didn't take melatonin, just a healthy dose of depression. Yeah, so Mikao is having a lot of self-doubt about how she couldn't save Kaguya. However, Mikao starts fighting her past self with the power given to her by Kaguya's soul. It's symbolic or something. The important part isn't Mikao's newfound development and acceptance of herself, but instead an awesome new move that replaces one of her old ones. Now this is awesome, but it reminds me of a little issue I have with the game, and that's that, well, the movesets for these guys kinda suck. I alluded to it last time with Cirno, but let me give a more in-depth example. Cirno gets her 2 moves from Masaru, okay? Then she has an ice attack, an ice attack, an ice attack, an ice attack that hits everybody, an ice attack that hits everybody. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, Cirno here is a physical fighter! There's little to no indication to how moves operate in this game. Do they use strength for this attack? IQ? Or hell, maybe even speed, because some attacks do. What are the enemies weak to? Who knows? Sometimes they're immune to entire characters, or immune to everything but a single attack. The original didn't tell you much about this either, but at least the remake rectified this with knowing what the enemy's weaknesses were. Oh, and you could probably infer elements that the character was using in an attack. Tell me how I'm supposed to differentiate between Mikao's moves and what is effective against what when they're all just fire. Sorry, rant over. With Mikao's new amazing weapon in hand, I venture to focus on my other party members. Sorry Mikao, but I already used you last time. I want to freshen up this playthrough a little bit. Next up we aim for Cirno's weapon, and for it we get to do a little series of fights with other fairies. Pretty neat. And at the very end we fight Fire Cirno. Okay, their name is Burning Runo, but they're pretty much just the yin to Cirno's yang. And from it we get to learn Cirno's final move, which I actually like a lot. It is one of the hardest hitting moves in the game, but 1/3 of the damage you deal gets removed from your permanent HP, so you can't just spam it. Or well, you can, because not many enemies can survive 3 of these things, and Cerno already has a massive health pool, but don't worry about it. I go into the wintry woods to find Hong Mei Ling, who I wanted to find earlier, I just completely forgot where she was. So that's on me. We find this little ice sliding dungeon and get some goodies from that, and then head over to Mei Ling's dungeon. I don't really want to keep her around, so I just try to get her stuff before benching her. Now this dungeon requires you to punch boulders to progress, but you only get as many as you have party members. We don't have the full party, but just 6 punches are enough to get through to the end because I'm insanely lucky. We have this uncomfortable enemy throughout the whole dungeon, and by the end we get Mei Ling's Master Nunchucks, the very same you get for you and Joe in the OG. Pretty rad! Now onto the bench you go! With our adventure into the wintry woods, we've found some weird mechanical things, so now we're able to pick up Shang, who will be our last party member. I then do Ponga's dungeon, which is basically just a memorization game. However, with how many enemies I ran away from, this is where we start getting a cooldown for every enemy we've run from. Just like the OG. So I just decided to be quick about it and just look up the answers, getting Ponga's Star Shot, which actually does change the projectile he uses, which is pretty neato. Either way, we bench Ponga, get the party that I'll use for the rest of the game, and run for the 100th time to fight Xenophobia? Sweet, we're fighting against the CEO of racism over here! Damn, racism's got hands. It's able to petrify our party, which pretty much instantly kills you, and then has another move which instantly kills you. He's rough, but there is a sweet spot with his attacks where he'll only use the petrifying attack, and since Shang is a doll, she's immune to all status conditions. So what I'm allowed to do is just have her tank shots while Yomu attacks for massive damage. It takes me a few tries, but racism is dead and we get this cool armor for it. After that, I decide to go back to the quiz show, which gets more cryptic with its questions in the second and third round, but I still wanted to fight the enemies. Big mistake, especially with the last wave, as these guys love to spam a move called Electrical Discharge. I hate this move so much. It attacks everyone and does ludicrous amounts of damage. Maybe if it was only in this fight I wouldn't hate it so much, but it gets spammed to high heaven and it's painful. After a few tries, I take these guys out and get my reward, a pretty nice arm piece. That's actually super nice for us. Next, we go to Rand's dungeon to pick up her ultimate weapon, and like with Sundown, this dungeon has a time limit. I go back to deal with the boss later for when the timer reaches 0, and ultimately it wasn't so bad. Finally, it's time for Shang's dungeon, where we have to do math. That doesn't seem so bad. Let's see here. Okay, so I looked up a guide and got Shang's ultimate headpiece. Okay, that's different. And also pretty annoying because I want Shang to have a weapon already. The only way to get that, though, is through a bunch of cure grass grinding, so I do that to get her weapon and her best arm piece as well. This leaves her off feeling just as frail as she always was, so I don't even know why I bothered. I climb up the Demon's Tower after getting 4 pieces of Bryon, you get that naturally from just going through the dungeons, and run away right before the final boss. We still got a few enemies to fight, including one optional one that you only fight if you run right here, and it's against Odio? Okay, that's kinda cool. But the fight, sadly enough, is not. This guy is the most annoying fight in the game. His main gimmick is having moves that do insane amounts of widespread damage. His main attack is a 3x3, and if you get anyone stuck in there that isn't a tanky fella, he can kiss that other party member goodbye. He also has this other move that pushes you, turns you around, and does a hefty amount of damage. Turning back around takes up too many turns, so you kinda just have to take it. And if he decides to use it twice in a row, your entire party is dead. Oh, also he dodges like everything. Why? Who knows. Didn't get a party that does damage to him and saved right before you ran away? Too bad, you're soft locked. Please make sure you use multiple save slots in this game because of stuff like this. I could go on a huge rant about this guy, especially with him taking an hour of attempts to take down, but at this point I'm just tired of looking at him. With that painful mess out of the way, I'd take out a few more bosses, including this thing again. Ironically, it's one of the easiest fights in this chapter. Also this Gap Beast. Whatever the hell is that? And the Behemoth from the Distant Future chapter, which is pretty cool, but is immune to everything you have but a singular attack that Ran has. Also, he has Electrical Discharge too, because screw me! Now, I may have blown through these last few encounters, but don't take that as there being nothing to them, but more that this final chapter is chock full of content. Hell, there are optional bosses I didn't fight just because I didn't know how to activate them. I can definitely commend the game for having a bunch of content, that's for sure. But now it's time to end this. The confrontation is just like it was with Orsted, with Mima asking us questions regarding who we chose at the end before the battle starts. And wow, this arena is kick-ass. A nice take on the audio battlefield for sure. And the boss itself is actually cool too, at least for the first phase. Just like the original, there are smaller bosses you need to take out while avoid damaging the middle part, since they don't take damage and will counter with a damaging attack that lowers all your stats. Your priority is to attack the 3 other guys, who after you take out, gets revived. This phase is done once the revive process is done 5 times, and the fight gives you a ton of freedom on how you want to go about this. Do you focus on a single target to try to burst it down as quick as you can? Spread out your damage? Heck, maybe one of your guys isn't that great offensively, so you use them to block off one of the enemies from the rest of your party. This first phase is super dynamic, and outside of electrical charge, is a fantastic fight. After the 5 revives, we go to phase 2 where... Okay, at this point, I think I have to censor some of these. Like, there isn't a nipple or anything, but Reimu practically just has a bare chest. And yeah, this is the original 4 characters from the fantasy chapter. The most I can glean from this picture, outside of the, uncomfortable shit with Yuka, is Marissa's full demonic look, as Mima would definitely look at her as some sort of demon for all she's done. Either way, this part of the fight isn't nearly as cool. You barely have any room to move around, and Mima can attack twice a turn. So hey, if someone gets hit by a really damaging attack and goes down, you have 0 reaction time for reviving them. It's pretty dumb, honestly. But if you've done all the optional stuff, you shouldn't have too much trouble. Just make sure you're at a good level, like 20 at minimum, and just keep up the offensive. You should be fine. With Mima defeated, follow the things you did in the original. When she asks you to kill her, simply say no and leave. The party members who weren't part of your final team show up on the way out, but Mima comes back in again. We have the same general spiel about her forcing us to refight the final bosses of each chapter in a one-on-one. These are as easy as they were in the OGs, so yeah, Rei Jihad still has no opportunity to attack me. Once all the bosses are done, Mima lets us return to the past, ending the game. When I first played the game, I thought this ending was super unfulfilling and anticlimactic, especially when the game showed they can defy expectations when it tries to. But now, with added context with Mima, I still feel the same way. It's just massively disappointing for the game to end in the same way when I know there could have been something more. The remake gave us a new fight right after the boss rush to make the game not feel as anticlimactic. Maybe I just got my hopes up too much, but I can't help how I feel. With times returning to their normal state, everyone can go back to their happy lives, including Mima. I mean, okay. I liked how Orsted just disappeared in the original, but that's neither here nor there. So, Touhou alive. It was a fun little experience for sure. As I said in the first video, which, wow, got a lot of traction, thanks to every single one of you who watched that video, it means a lot to me. Anyways, as I said, Live Alive fan games are super rare, so Touhou Alive is special in that regards. But at the end of the day, with how little was changed in some chapters and how major changes were in others, it ultimately gave me a feeling of wanting more. Despite me taking something out of it, Mima's whole ending feels incredibly derivative when it felt like it could have been something way more. Not to mention there is some really outdated stuff in this game, such as that line in the Hirai chapter, or the uncomfortable shit with Yuka. I don't know where the original creator is nowadays, but I can only hope that they're doing well, and if they made another game, that they ironed out the issues. Because there's no doubt that there's plenty of talent and love that went into this game. Now, am I going to continue on this road of Touhou? Maybe. At some point in the future, possibly, but definitely not anytime soon. The game and the community explaining stuff to me has made me more interested, but there's a lot of other stuff going on at the moment for me to really take the deep dive. I greatly appreciate the fandom for being so welcoming to a newcomer like me. And if you're interested in anything else I do in the future, I hope you stick around. The next video won't be as big as this, that's for sure, especially with college making my production a lot less efficient, but I'll still try to stick to the schedule. Until then, thank you all for watching, and have a good one.